Okay, Sam, so let's move on to our second story. Chinese and Indian troops have reportedly clashed again, this time at the Sikkim border, with injuries reported on both sides, according to Indian media. Tensions have been high along the Chinese Indian border, which is the world's longest disputed border. Just last June, clashes erupted between Indian and Chinese soldiers, which resulted in over 20 deaths on the Indian side. Sam, can you tell us a little bit what happened specifically this time around?
Uh, to be honest, no, I can't because there has been no. It's quite foggy the specifics of this clash, except
Oh,
the
okay.
fact that it happened in Sikkim. So yeah, sorry about that. But I can give you a bit some other stuff. For example, um, I was checking out. First of all, this was only reported by the Indian side, and typically it wasn't reported by the Chinese side. And for example, you just mentioned the fact that there were 20 casualties during the flare-ups during the last, I believe, year. And we don't know how many Chinese have died because Chinese government doesn't is not transparent in that way. You know,
Yeah,
they don't
exactly. Actually, sorry, can I cut
discuss
you
this.
off there? Yeah, it's actually
Sure, sure.
interesting that you saw that because when I wrote this down, I realized that I'm only putting the casualties on one side. But then I remembered when this happened a few months ago, we also didn't know, right, about the Chinese one. So I thought this is just how it's been reported. But yeah.
Yeah, and last time I checked on this story today, Chinese officials have not commented on this. That they haven't even confirmed that such a class has taken place in Sikkim. Interestingly, I saw the Indian coverage of it, India Today or something, and Print wasn't it, some other channels, and they were. I must say the way Indians cover this news is very nationalistic. They were saying that yes, China again is trying to do what they did to us in 1950s, 1960s, and this is not a India that would take that anymore. And they emphasize the fact that there are reports that few Chinese have been injured, no casualties, but no Indians have been injured, and they were very, you could see that it's a issue very close to heart of millions in India, but so that's the way India covered it. China still hasn't commented, but interestingly to me, as somebody who just pretty much during the last year started to follow geopolitics of China India relations, because that was something that was always a blind spot for me personally. It was interesting because to me this does seem to confirm the fact that China is a has a clear strategy of trying to spread India away from its sea power, from its navy, pretty much. Uh, that's what I've been reading a lot about. That the Chinese strategy seems to be to keep India away from modernizing and improving its naval power, so China can basically dominate the Indian Ocean. And it's like Sikkim is to the east of the area Ladakh, the area that 6 months ago, I believe, or whatever it was, the last flare up was. This is way further in the east. And when that conflict happened in Ladakh, India was forced into moving significant amount of troops to that region. And India has a far, far smaller military budget. I believe their military budget comes around something around $80 billion, and the Chinese one comes around $280 billion. So it's not comparable. So China clearly seems to be trying to keep India busy and not away from they're trying to not allow Indians military to develop as fast as the Chinese one is developing, which is quite, I would assume it's a quite a natural and probably wise strategy, considering that India has a growing relationship with the US and has the ability to purchase, you know, high-end military, high-end missiles from Americans. So that's China. That seems to be the Chinese strategy. And to add to that, just because that I'm not talking bullshit completely. For example, recently there was an area. This was something I saw on the Print channel, which I highly recommend everybody follow that channel. They do best probably coverage of Indian politics in English language. There is a region called I apologize in advance for mispronunciation. Arunachal Pradesh. This area is to the east of Sikkim even. This is probably like some of the most eastern parts of India or China. This is a disputed area, and in a disputed area controlled by China, they have apparently they last week this came out that they built a very high-end luxury village as a like I think it's been kept a secret, but it's in a it's the typical program that Chinese government does to combat poverty, and then they build a high-end village in a disputed territory sort of it's kind of Israelis do the same with in Palestinian areas. If you build a city somewhere, it's going to be far more difficult in negotiations to ask for people to be removed, for structures to be destroyed, that type of thing. So it seems all along the border, because Ladakh is in the north, I think slightly to the east, it's next to Kashmir and Jammu. And then you have Sikkim, and then you have this area. They're clearly trying to spread, because now Sikkim there wasn't much military presence there from the Indian side, but now I think they're going to redirect some of their military equipment to that area, just like they did with Ladakh. And then this area, same. So, yeah, it's quite interesting. It seems China is basically trying to keep India busy, but I do think China doesn't need to worry too much. Indian businesses are highly dependent on China, especially their startups. And Modi seems to be more interested in, to be honest, internal politics and to an extent fighting Pakistan, because it's a somewhat weaker enemy. It's an enemy he can fight. And I think Indian, even though they're super nationalistic and all that, I think they do realize that China is an enemy too big for them. And I think, they need to come to an understanding about the Indian Ocean more than about the borders in the north, because all we are talking about is pretty much most of it is useless land. Some of it is strategic because it's high ground, but most of it is land that there are more lands with far more resources. So I think this is about the Indian Ocean and China's access to world trade.
Okay. A lot of extremely interesting stuff there. So let me try to pick up on a few things, see if there's anything more to talk about. So, one thing you started about is saying we don't know the specifics and all that, but just with the location, so that's interesting. So this particular dispute happened somewhere different than the previous dispute, and so they're all along the border and not just specific points. That was interesting. Oh yeah, the media coverage which you mentioned. I saw that in some Indian channels, of course, they're reporting this as breaking news. So it was really huge there. And then, so the strategy that you were talking about. So China's real concern here is that they don't care too much about these areas on the border, but they're just engaging in this dispute to eventually, hopefully, get better access to the Indian Ocean. Is that what you were saying?
Basically, to keep a good access to Indian Ocean, because by keeping India busy, because if India starts building up a navy along its coast, it would dominate the Indian Ocean. It has the most amount. It has full access. It has the full view of the ocean because of its coastline. So I think they're trying to keep India busy for now, so they don't modernize, they don't develop their navy, and at the same time they don't get too close perhaps to America. There are all the other stuff as well, but if India does if it does build up its navy, then it would be very difficult for China to combat that. This is far easier. You just send a couple of and by the way, these areas, based on treaties from before, there are no guns or no what do you call them? I was gonna say warm weapons. What did they call
Deadly
guns?
weapons?
deadly. I don't know, just no firearms, no nothing. Like all they have are
Yeah,
sticks, and like the recent conflict was described as a brawl.
yeah,
So
yeah,
it's it just a few soldiers
yeah.
sadly die, but it's far low cost than building up a massive navy at this point for China.
Yeah, okay, okay. Hand to hand combat then happening at the border. But okay, anything else on this? This is really, really fascinating. Very interesting. Anything else to add about the story?
No, but yeah, but it's getting so fascinating that hopefully I'm gonna read up on more on it and come up with a more interesting topics. Maybe we can do deep dives like the ones they do in the print about the issue. It will probably be a copy of the print, but.